It was supposed to be a normal night. James Latham Jimmy, to everyone who knew him, had checked into the Gulfview Inn in Corpus Christi, Texas. He was a reliable man, the kind who never missed a deadline and always called his wife before bed. He was in town for a trade conference, representing his HVAC company. Jimmy didn't party. He didn't smoke. And he certainly didn't make enemies. That's why it didn't make sense when the maid found him lying face down on the floor of room 519 the next morning, dead. The TV was still glowing. His wallet, untouched. Nothing was broken or out of place. No blood. No bruises. The room was calm, quiet. Like someone had just stepped out for a walk. The coroner's report was just as strange. Cardiac arrest. Natural causes. Case closed. But Jimmy's wife, Lori, didn't buy it. He was healthy, she told them. He exercised. He had zero history of heart problems. This doesn't add up. But no one listened. Not the hotel. Not the police. Not even the doctors. So she made a call that would change everything. She hired Marcus Dale. A former DEA agent turned private investigator, Marcus had a reputation for solving cold cases and impossible murders. He wasn't cheap, but he got results. Marcus flew to Corpus Christi 2 days later and checked into the Gulfview Inn. He walked the hallway where Jimmy had spent his last night and asked to see room 519. The staff was hesitant. There's nothing to see, they told him. It was a natural death. Marcus didn't care. The room was spotless. Maybe too spotless. No spilled coffee, no misplaced furniture, no sign that a man had died there just days ago. But the moment Marcus saw the autopsy report, everything changed. Jimmy's ribs were broken. His liver was ruptured. One lung had collapsed. It looked like he had been crushed. How does that happen in a hotel room? Marcus asked aloud. There were no external wounds. No scratches, no bruises, no bleeding. Just massive internal trauma. Like he'd been hit by a truck, inside a quiet, clean hotel room. Marcus smelled foul play. Security footage was next. Jimmy had returned to his room at 8:12 p.m. alone. No one followed. No one entered after. And yet he died a violent death. It made no sense. Until Marcus noticed one small, odd detail in the crime scene photos. A cigarette, but in the sink. But Jimmy didn't smoke. Lori confirmed it. He hated cigarettes, she said. So whose was it? The fingerprint analysis came back, unknown male. That was enough for Marcus. He went back to the hotel and asked for room 521, the room right next to Jimmy's. And that's where everything unraveled. Room 521 looked ordinary. But Marcus knew walls could hide secrets. He examined the layout. The bed in 519 was pushed right up against the shared wall. And then, near the floor in 521, he saw it just above the baseboard, a patch of drywall. Fresh paint. Still soft. He ran his fingers over it. Peeled it back. A hole. He checked the opposite wall in room 519, behind where Jimmy's bed had been. Another hole. Aligned perfectly. Faint traces of gunpowder along the edges. It hit Marcus like lightning. Jimmy Latham didn't have a heart attack. He had been shot. Through the wall. The slug tore through the drywall and into Jimmy's chest while he watched TV. The force broke his ribs, collapsed a lung, shredded his liver. But there was no exit wound. The bullet stayed inside him. And with no bleeding visible, no one ever thought to look. It was the perfect silent kill. But not a murder. Marcus started asking questions. Who was in room 521 that night? The hotel pulled records. 2 refinery workers had rented it, Keith Moran and Billy Dance. They were part of a welding crew contracted for a nearby job. Keith left the morning after Jimmy died. Billy stayed one more night, then left too. Marcus tracked Billy down in Lubbock. When he opened the door and saw Marcus' badge, Billy broke fast. He told Marcus that Keith had been drinking. He was showing off his pistol, Billy said. Just being dumb. Then Keith had pointed the gun at the wall and laughed. Bet I could shoot through this. He pulled the trigger. They waited. No one knocked. No one screamed. The TV in the next room didn't even flicker. So they assumed the bullet just lodged in the wall. To cover it up, they patched the hole with spare drywall and paint from their work truck. Nothing ever came of it, so they left. Billy was shaken. We didn't mean to hurt anyone, he said. But someone did die. And Keith Moran? He disappeared. The police reopened the case. With new evidence in Billy's testimony, they classified Jimmy's death as a homicide. A bizarre, accidental homicide, but still, a crime. But one question remained: where was Keith Moran? And if he had killed once even by accident, what would he do if someone came knocking? Keith Moran had vanished. No forwarding address. No social media. No calls to family. It was like he had evaporated. And now he wasn't just a drunken welder, he was a fugitive wanted for the killing of an innocent man. Private investigator Marcus Dale wasn't the kind of man who gave up. Not when a killer was still walking free. Not when a widow was still waiting for answers. So he started digging. First stop, the refinery. Keith and Billy had worked on a short-term contract for an out-of-town contractor. Their last paycheck had been mailed, no direct deposit, no listed address. Just a P.O. box in San Angelo, Texas. Marcus drove out there. The box hadn't been checked in weeks. But the name on the lease? Keith Moran. A small lead, but it was something. Marcus began knocking on doors. Motels. Dive bars. Laundromats. Anywhere a transient worker might lay low. 3 days later, he got a hit. The owner of a grimy roadside motel on the edge of town remembered Keith. Quiet guy, she said. Paid cash. Stayed for a week, then left without a word. Had a duffel bag and a toolbox. Marcus pulled security footage. It showed Keith, 2 weeks after Jimmy's death. He had shaved his beard, dyed his hair black, and he was using a different name, Kyle Morrow. But Marcus knew that face. He just didn't know where it was now. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source, Facebook. Marcus scoured local buy and sell groups under the alias Kyle Morrow. A week later, a welding helmet popped up posted by a guy selling lightly used tools, cash only. The number matched a burner. But the background in the photo? A rust-red trailer in the woods. Marcus traced the image to a patch of county land near Sweetwater. He drove straight there. The trailer sat alone, hidden behind mesquite trees and tall grass. The place looked abandoned except for the faint flicker of a TV behind closed curtains. Marcus didn't call the cops yet. He wanted to be sure. He circled around the back and found fresh boot prints, oil stains on the ground, welding rods on the porch. He knocked once. No answer. Knocked again. Louder. A voice inside. Who is it? Marcus pulled his jacket back just enough to flash his badge. Keith. We need to talk. Silence. Then the door creaked open. And there he was. Same face. Same eyes. Keith didn't run. He just looked tired. Inside the trailer, Keith lit a cigarette with shaking hands. I didn't mean to kill him, he said before Marcus even asked a question. I was just drunk. Showing off. Thought it was just drywall. We didn't hear anything. Nothing. I didn't even know he was dead until 2 days later when I saw the news online. Why didn't you come forward? Marcus asked. Keith looked down. Because I was scared. And then he said something that made Marcus pause. I thought maybe, if I left it alone, it'd stay quiet. Back in Corpus Christi, the DA reviewed the case. Billy Dance got a deal, no charges in exchange for testimony. Keith Moran? He was arrested and charged with manslaughter and obstruction of justice. It was one of the strangest murder cases the county had ever seen. No fight. No motive. Just a single bullet fired through a wall, and a man who never saw it coming. At the sentencing, Lori Latham spoke. Her voice trembled, but her words were sharp. You killed my husband with a joke. A moment of ego. You took away a father, a husband, a good man. You didn't mean to, but you did. And you ran. That's what I can't forgive. Keith was sentenced to 12 years. Not for murder but for the silence that followed. But here's the twist most people don't know. Marcus, months after the case closed, went back to room 519. He stared at the patched wall. And for the first time, he noticed something else. A small piece of metal, lodged deep in the floorboard behind where Jimmy had collapsed. He pulled it out with tweezers. It wasn't part of the bullet. It was a fragment from a second shot fired low, into the floor. Marcus froze. Keith had said he fired one bullet. But now there were two. So what really happened that night? Was it just a drunken mistake? Or had someone else fired that second shot? Was Billy telling the whole truth? Marcus wasn't sure. He pocketed the fragment. and made a quiet promise to himself this case wasn't over. Marcus Dale had solved more than his share of strange cases, but this one? This one had too many loose ends. Keith Moran was behind bars, Billy Dance was walking free, and Jimmy Latham? Still dead from a bullet fired through a hotel wall. But now, a second bullet had been found, lodged deep in the floorboard behind where Jimmy collapsed. Small, twisted, almost missed by cleanup crews. Marcus had it tested. Different angle, different caliber, different gun. Billy said he fired one shot. Keith confirmed it. So who fired the second? Marcus went back to the surveillance footage. Room 519. Billy and Keith both drunk, laughing, showing off. Only one muzzle flash seen, one bang on the audio. But between 3:14 and 3:18 a.m., there was a flicker of movement in the hallway. A figure, hoodie up, walking fast, carrying a small bag. No key card swipe, no check-in under that name. Just a man, moving like he belonged. He turned the corner toward room 517, 2 doors down from Keith and Billy. Marcus requested the guest records for 517, booked under the name Darren Keller, but the ID used was fake. Security footage caught him leaving the next morning with no bag. He left behind only a dirty towel, and a spent shell casing tucked in the trash. Same caliber as the floor bullet. It wasn't just a drunken accident anymore. It was a setup. Marcus began digging into Darren Keller. Turns out, the real Darren died 5 years ago. The alias had been used before twice. Both times in small towns. Both times, a shooting was blamed on someone else. Both times, the suspect remembered only one shot. Marcus drove to one of those towns, Lagrange. Spoke to an old deputy who worked the case. Strangest thing, the deputy said. Guy swore he only fired once. But we found 2 bullets in the victim. Marcus asked if the case had ever been reopened. It hadn't. That meant this wasn't just about Keith. It was about a pattern. He cross-referenced hotel crimes with friendly fire mistakes, accidents blamed on alcohol, unlucky ricochets. And one thing kept repeating each time: there was another guest nearby. Never suspected. Gone before dawn. A ghost with a gun. Staging deaths. Hiding in plain sight. Back in Corpus Christi, Marcus ran facial recognition on the man in the hoodie. Match found. Name, Colby Wexler. Discharged Marine. Sharpshooter. Honorable service, then vanished from the grid. No credit. No social. Rumors of black market merc work. Marcus stared at the screen. This was no prankster. This was a professional. So why frame Keith and Billy? Was it random? Or was someone pulling strings? The answer came in a manila envelope. No return address. Just one note inside: room 519 wasn't the first. It won't be the last. You're not ready for this. And beneath it, a photo. Grainy. Zoomed from across the street. Marcus. Walking out of the hotel. Bullet fragment in hand. Someone was watching. He took the evidence to the DA. Too thin to prosecute. No motive. No clear witness. And Keith? Still guilty of running. But now Marcus knew. The fatal shot that killed Jimmy Latham wasn't from Keith's gun. Billy Dance never returned Marcus's calls. Moved states. Changed numbers. Maybe he was scared. Maybe he knew the truth. Or maybe he helped cover it up. 1 year later, another case. Another hotel. Different city. Same story. Drunk man. Accidental shooting. Only fired once, but the autopsy showed 2 wounds. Marcus got on a plane. The man in room 519 was just the beginning. Subscribe now and turn on notifications for more.